The Moon Palace didn't welcome those who came bearing burdens. Lyra Griffin knew this as she clutched her twins' hands, their small fingers warm against her trembling palms. Once, she had walked these marble halls with her head high, respected as the maid of a diplomat. Now she was merely a widow, the mother of half-breed children whom the pack called burdens, in whispers they never bothered to hide. "Stand tall," she murmured to her 5-year-olds, though her own spine ached from years of bending to survive. The lunar selection ceremony was her duty, not her choice. Every unmated female must present herself to the Alpha King, a tradition as ancient as the moon itself. But traditions weren't built for women like her, whose mate had vanished into shadow, leaving her with twins and whispers that followed like hungry wolves. They would reject her. She knew this. The elders with their silver-streaked hair and cold eyes would see her children and dismiss her before she could speak her name, and she would accept it, as she had accepted every indignity these past 3 years, with quiet dignity and a heart that refused to break completely. What Lyra couldn't know, as she led her children through those hostile halls, was that King Kalen Nightshade had spent his reign searching for authenticity in a world of masks, that his golden eyes would find her not because she shone brightest, but because she alone didn't try to shine at all. Before we begin, remember to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. Every day, a new story awaits you. Now, let us begin. Sometimes fate arrives dressed as humiliation. Sometimes salvation comes in the moment we expect to be destroyed. And sometimes, the greatest power lies not in those who have never fallen, but in those who have learned to rise again and again from the ashes of their former lives. The hallways of the Moon Palace smelled of nervous perfume and anxious hope. Lyra Griffin kept her head down as she guided her 5-year-old twins through the back corridors, away from the curious stares of the attendants. The ceremony would begin in less than an hour, and she hadn't even secured permission to enter the presentation hall. "Mama, my shoes hurt," whispered Ellie, the smaller of her twins, tugging at the hem of Lyra's simple navy dress. "Just a little longer, sweetheart," Lyra murmured, adjusting the collar of Ellie's dress, a hand-me-down she'd spent 3 nights altering by candlelight. "Remember what we practiced? Stand tall, speak only when spoken to, and don't shift, even if we get scared," finished Lucas, her son, his golden eyes, so like his father's, serious beyond his years. "We know, Mama." Lyra swallowed hard, touching the silver pendant at her throat, the last gift from her mate, before he'd vanished on a diplomatic mission 3 years ago. The Silver Crescent Pack had declared him dead after a year of searching. Some whispered he'd abandoned them, unable to face fatherhood. Others suggested something darker. Lyra never believed either story, but her opinion meant little in pack hierarchy now. The doors to the antechamber loomed ahead, guarded by 2 stone-faced wolves in ceremonial armor. Lyra straightened her shoulders and approached. "Lyra Griffin, Silver Crescent Pack," she announced, her voice steadier than her heartbeat. "I'm here for the lunar selection." The guards exchanged glances, their eyes dropping to the twins who clung to her sides. "This is a presentation of eligible females to the Alpha King," said the taller guard, his voice laced with disdain. "Not a daycare service." Lyra had anticipated this. "I've been summoned like all unmated females of breeding age." She produced the formal scroll bearing the royal seal. "My circumstances have been explained to the council." "Your circumstances," repeated the guard, making no move to take the scroll. "You mean your inability to find someone to watch your—" He paused, his gaze lingering on the twins with undisguised contempt. "Burdens." Lucas's small hand tightened around hers, and Lyra felt her wolf rise dangerously close to the surface, maternal instinct sharpening her canines behind closed lips. "My children," she corrected, ice-coating each syllable, "are legitimate heirs of the Silver Crescent bloodline. I have no family here to watch them, as the council well knows." The guard might have argued further, but the doors behind him swung open, revealing a woman draped in silver silks, her gray hair twisted into an elaborate crown of braids. Elder Margot, chief matchmaker of the 5 territories. "What is the delay?" she demanded, then spotted Lyra and the twins. Her lips thinned to a bloodless line. "Ah, the widow." Elder Margot stepped forward, her perfume, violets and something sharper, metallic, enveloping them. "Lyra Griffin, I received your petition." She looked down at the twins with a critical eye. "I assumed you would make appropriate arrangements." "I have no one." Lyra replied simply. As I explained in my letter, and as I explained in my response, which you apparently disregarded, the lunar selection is not a place for children, particularly not. Her gaze lingered on Lucas, whose eyes had begun to glow softly with anxiety. Half-breeds. The insult struck like a physical blow. Lyra's mate had been from the northern packs, his bloodline ancient and respected but different. Their union had caused murmurs, but as the daughter of a respected warrior, Lyra had been granted the match. That respect had evaporated with her mate's disappearance. My children are pure-blooded wolves, Lyra stated firmly, and I was commanded to appear, under penalty of pack exile. Then you should have made the difficult choice, shouldn't you? Elder Margot sighed, as though explaining a simple concept to a dull child. The Alpha King seeks a queen, not a ready-made family, particularly not one with such complicated genetics. Ellie whimpered, picking up on the hostility directed at them. Lucas shifted slightly, positioning himself between his sister and the elder, a protective gesture that made Lyra's heart ache with pride and sorrow. Let them enter, came a new voice, deep and cultured. Another elder had appeared, this one a tall male with silver streaking his temples. Elder Thorne, the council's diplomatic advisor. The law states all unmated females of childbearing age must present. It says nothing about their existing children. Elder Margot's mouth opened in protest, but Elder Thorne cut her off with a raised hand. The Alpha King will make his own judgments. That is his right. Margot's face tightened, but she stepped aside. Very well, but they will wait at the back, behind the pillars, where they won't distract from the worthy candidates. Lyra inclined her head in grudging thanks to Elder Thorne, then guided her children through the doors before anyone could change their mind. The great hall of the Moon Palace took her breath away. Vaulted ceilings arched overhead, painted with scenes of the first werewolves receiving the blessing of the moon. Crystal chandeliers dripped light onto the assembled crowd, at least 200 people from all 5 territories, dressed in their finest. Nobles and merchants alike had brought their daughters, sisters, and nieces, hoping to secure the ultimate alliance. As promised, Lyra was directed to the far back corner, behind a massive marble pillar carved with the phases of the moon. From here, she could see the ceremonial dais where the Alpha King would sit, but she would be virtually invisible to him, which was clearly the point. Are there snacks? Lucas whispered, earning a gentle shush from Lyra. Not yet, little wolf. We must be patient and quiet. A bell tolled, deep and resonant, silencing the murmuring crowd. The massive double doors at the end of the hall swung open, and the entire assembly dropped to one knee as royal guards entered in formation. His Majesty, Alpha King Kalen Nightshade, ruler of the 5 territories, guardian of the Sacred Moon Treaty, and protector of the bloodlines, announced the Master of Ceremonies. Lyra knelt awkwardly, making sure the twins followed suit, though they peeked curiously through their lashes. She kept her gaze downcast, as protocol demanded, but couldn't resist a glance as the Alpha King passed. She had never seen him in person. Few had. After ascending the throne 5 years ago following his father's assassination, King Kalen had become something of a recluse, emerging only for matters of grave importance. The fact that he had called this lunar selection, the first in over 20 years, had shocked the 5 packs. He moved with the fluid grace of an apex predator, his steps silent despite his impressive height. His shoulders were broad beneath a midnight blue jacket adorned with silver embroidery. His dark hair swept back from a face that seemed carved from marble. But it was his eyes that made Lyra's breath catch, amber gold and intense, seeming to absorb everything while revealing nothing. This was no mere wolf. This was a king born to power, whose very presence commanded submission. He took his place on the dais, and with a gesture, bid everyone rise. "Welcome," he said, his voice carrying effortlessly to every corner of the hall. "I thank you for answering the call." Elder Margot stepped forward, bowing deeply. "We are honored by your Majesty's decision to seek a queen. The finest unmated females of the 5 territories await your consideration." "So I see." Something in his tone suggested he was less than impressed, though his expression remained neutral. "Let us proceed." What followed was a parade of beauty and wealth that made Lyra increasingly aware of her own shabby appearance. One by one, daughters of nobility were presented, each more beautiful than the last, their dresses more elaborate, their accomplishments more impressive. Lady Seraphina of the Western Shore Pack, daughter of Alpha Tristan, accomplished in music and battle strategy, announced the master of ceremonies. A willowy blonde with striking blue eyes approached the dais, her silver gown catching the light as she moved. She was beautiful, poised, and clearly aware of it. "Your Majesty," she purred, her curtsy deep and graceful. "It is an honor to be considered for such an exalted position." King Kalen inclined his head but said nothing. Lady Seraphina held her position a moment too long before retreating, a flicker of uncertainty crossing her perfect features. This pattern repeated itself for nearly an hour. The king remained polite but detached, showing neither particular interest nor dislike for any candidate. Lyra found herself studying him, noting the slight tension around his eyes, the way his fingers occasionally tapped against the arm of his throne, signs of impatience only visible to someone who was watching carefully. "Mama," Ellie whispered suddenly, tugging at Lyra's dress. "I need the bathroom." Lyra bit her lip. "Can you wait just a little longer, sweetheart?" Ellie shook her head vigorously, her face scrunching in that way that meant trouble was imminent. "Lucas, stay right here. Don't move," Lyra instructed, then discreetly began edging toward a side door she hoped led to a corridor with facilities. They had made it halfway when Elder Margot's voice cut through the hall. "And where do you think you're going, widow?" The room fell silent. Hundreds of eyes turned toward Lyra and Ellie, including, she realized with a sinking heart, those of the Alpha King himself. "My daughter needs the restroom," Lyra explained, keeping her voice steady despite her embarrassment. "We'll return shortly." "You haven't been presented," Elder Margot said, her tone making it clear this was intentional. "Yet you would disrupt the ceremony?" Lyra felt heat rise to her cheeks. "I meant no disrespect. It's a child's need, nothing more." "Children who shouldn't be here at all," someone muttered from the crowd, loud enough for everyone to hear. Ellie pressed closer to Lyra's side, her small face crumpling with shame. Lyra felt rage bubbling beneath her skin, her wolf scratching to defend her pup. "I was commanded to appear," she said clearly, meeting Elder Margot's gaze. "And as no one volunteered to watch my children, they came with me. If this disrupts your ceremony, I apologize, but I will not apologize for being a mother." A shocked murmur rippled through the crowd. No one spoke to an elder that way, especially not a widow with no standing. Elder Margot's face darkened. "Your insolence proves what we all know. You are unfit for consideration. Take your half-breed pups and leave the hall. Now." Lyra felt as though she'd been slapped. The public humiliation burned worse than the rejection itself. She had known she stood no chance with the king, had never even wanted to attend. But to be dismissed like this, to have her children insulted. "Mama?" Lucas had appeared at her side, his small face tight with confusion and hurt. "It's all right," she whispered, though it was anything but. "We're leaving now." She took both children by the hand and turned toward the exit, her back straight and her eyes forward, refusing to show how deeply the words had cut. "Stop." The command resonated through the hall, quiet yet undeniable. The Alpha King had risen from his throne, his golden eyes fixed not on Elder Margot, but on Lyra and her twins. "Your name," he said, the words falling into the stunned silence like stones into still water. Lyra turned slowly, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Lyra Griffin, Your Majesty, of the Silver Crescent Pack." Something flickered across his face. Recognition, perhaps, or curiosity. "And these are your children?" "Yes, Your Majesty. Ellie and Lucas." The king descended the dais steps, his movements deliberate. The crowd parted before him, expressions ranging from confusion to scandalized fascination. He stopped directly before Lyra, close enough that she could detect his scent, pine and wood smoke and something wilder, like a storm brewing over distant mountains. He looked down at the twins, who stared back with wide eyes. Then, to everyone's astonishment, King Kalen crouched to their level. "Hello," he said, his deep voice gentling. "I apologize for the poor welcome you've received in my home." Lucas, ever protective, shifted slightly in front of his sister. "It's okay. We're used to it." The king's expression darkened momentarily, then cleared. No child should be used to discourtesy, especially not in the royal palace. He looked at Ellie, who was still fidgeting uncomfortably. "I believe you needed the facilities?" Ellie nodded mutely, eyes wide with wonder that the king himself was addressing her. King Kalen straightened and beckoned to a female attendant. Please escort the young lady to the royal restroom, the one with the moonstone basins that she might find interesting. The attendant bowed and offered her hand to Ellie, who looked questioningly at her mother. Lyra nodded, and Ellie went, though not without a backward glance. The king turned to Elder Margot, whose face had drained of color. "I don't recall giving anyone permission to dismiss candidates on my behalf," he said, his tone conversational yet edged with steel. "Your Majesty," Elder Margot began, Protocol dictates that I choose who stays and who goes," he interrupted. "And I don't recall dismissing Lyra Griffin or her children." The elder's mouth snapped shut. King Kaelin turned back to Lyra, studying her with those unsettling golden eyes. "You are here because the law required it, not by choice." It wasn't a question, but Lyra answered anyway. "Yes, Your Majesty, yet you came, despite knowing the reception you would receive because it was your duty." "I did." A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth, brief, unexpected, and strangely wolfish. "Integrity. How refreshing." He glanced around the hall, his gaze sweeping over the assembled candidates and their families. "This ceremony is concluded for today. I require time for reflection." Shocked whispers erupted throughout the hall. The lunar selection was meant to last 3 days, with eliminations after each round of presentations. For the king to halt proceedings after the first day was unprecedented. "But Your Majesty," protested Elder Thorne, "you've only seen half the candidates." "I've seen enough," the king replied simply. Then, to everyone's astonishment, he turned back to Lyra. "Lyra Griffin, you and your children will join me for dinner this evening. 8 o'clock, in the private royal dining room." The hall erupted in gasps and mutters. Lyra herself could only stare, certain she had misheard. "Your Majesty?" she managed finally. "Unless you have other plans?" A hint of amusement colored his tone. "No, yes, we would be honored," Lyra stammered, her composure finally cracking. "Excellent." He turned to Lucas, who was watching the exchange with solemn eyes. "Young man, do you like stories?" Lucas nodded cautiously. "Good. I have quite a library. Perhaps you can help me choose something suitable for after dinner." With that, the Alpha King turned and strode from the hall, leaving chaos in his wake. Nobles and elders alike stared at Lyra with expressions ranging from shock to outright hostility. She stood frozen, unable to process what had just happened. The Alpha King, ruler of all 5 territories, had just singled her out, a widowed mother with no standing, no wealth, and twin children who had already been labeled burdens, from among the most eligible females in the realm. And she had absolutely no idea why. The royal dining room was nothing like Lyra had imagined. Instead of the vast, intimidating hall she'd expected, she and the twins were escorted to an intimate chamber with warm cedar paneling and a crackling fireplace. A single table dominated the center, set with fine china and crystal, but sized for a small family, rather than a state dinner. "This is where the king eats?" Lucas whispered, eyeing the hunting scenes carved into the walls. "When I wish privacy, yes," answered a voice from the doorway. Lyra turned to find King Kaelin watching them, having exchanged his formal attire for a simple black shirt and trousers that somehow made him look more regal, not less. Gone was the ceremonial silver circlet, revealing tousled dark hair that softened his sharp features. The twins immediately ducked behind Lyra, peeking around her skirts. "Your Majesty," Lyra said, dipping into a curtsy. "Thank you for your invitation. Please, when it's just us, Kaelin will do." He gestured to the table. "Shall we?" Lyra hesitated. 5 years of struggle had taught her to question unexpected generosity. "Why are we here?" she asked bluntly. "Of all the women presented today, because you were the only one who didn't want to be there," he replied, his golden eyes glinting with something like amusement. It was refreshing. Before Lyra could parse this strange answer, servants appeared with the first course, a fragrant soup that made her stomach growl embarrassingly. The twins, seated on chairs boosted with cushions, eyed the array of silverware with evident confusion. "Start from the outside and work your way in," Kaelin advised them, demonstrating with his own utensils. "Though when I was your age, I often ate with my hands until my mother caught me." This small confession, the image of the intimidating Alpha King as a messy child, broke some of the tension. Ellie giggled, and Lucas's posture relaxed slightly. "Were you born a king?" Ellie asked, earning a mortified look from her mother. "Ellie, that's not—" "It's all right," Kaylin interrupted. No, little one. I became king when my father died 5 years ago. Our daddy died too, Ellie said solemnly. He went away and never came back. A shadow crossed Kaylin's face. I'm very sorry to hear that. He's not dead, Lucas corrected firmly. He's just lost. Right, Mama? Lyra's throat tightened. We don't know for certain, sweetheart. Kaylin studied her with an unreadable expression. Your mate was Darian Griffin? The diplomat sent to negotiate with the Eastern Territories? Lyra nearly dropped her spoon. You knew him? We met several times. He spoke often of his mate and the pups she was expecting. Kaylin's eyes softened. He was a good man. Honorable. The pack declared him dead after a year, Lyra said quietly. But they never found... She stopped, aware of the twins' attentive ears. There was no certainty. Kaylin nodded, understanding her unspoken meaning. Hope is not a weakness, Lyra Griffin. Something in his tone, compassion without pity, touched a part of her that had been walled off for years. She looked away, blinking rapidly. The conversation shifted to lighter topics as the meal progressed. Kaylin proved surprisingly adept with children, answering Lucas's endless questions about the palace and listening with apparent interest to Ellie's detailed description of her favorite stuffed wolf. And what do you do in the Silver Crescent pack? Kaylin asked Lyra as dessert was served. An elaborate confection of pastry and berries that had the twins wide-eyed with delight. I work as a healer's assistant, she replied, and I take in mending. She didn't mention the long nights spent sewing by candlelight after the twins were asleep, or how the pack healer paid her half what her skills were worth, knowing she had no alternative. You were studying to be a full healer before your mate disappeared, Kaylin said. Not a question, but a statement. Lyra stared at him. How could you possibly know that? A ghost of a smile touched his lips. I make it my business to know about people who interest me. And I interest you because... many reasons. His gaze lingered on her face, then shifted to the twins, who were unsuccessfully trying to hide their yawns. But perhaps those are discussions for another time. Your cubs are tired. As if on cue, Ellie slumped against Lyra's arm, her eyelids drooping. We should return to our inn, Lyra said, though the thought of the long walk through the dark streets was daunting. Nonsense. Rooms have been prepared for you here in the palace. Your Majesty, Kaylin, that's not necessary. It's quite late, he interrupted smoothly, and I promised Lucas stories from my library. Lucas perked up despite his fatigue. Really? Really, Kaylin confirmed. Unless your mother objects? Put that way, how could she? Lyra nodded her reluctant consent. Their quarters turned out to be a spacious suite with a sitting room, separate bedrooms, and a bathing chamber that made the twins squeal with delight. While a kindly maid helped them bathe, Kaylin led Lyra to a small adjoining library. I thought perhaps we could speak privately, he said, closing the door partially, but leaving it open enough to hear the children. Lyra crossed her arms, her earlier confusion hardening into suspicion. What is this really about? Why single out a widow with 2 children when you have your pick of suitable mates? Kaylin's expression grew serious. Do you know why I called the lunar selection? The elders say it's time you secured your bloodline. The elders, he said with unexpected bitterness, are overly concerned with bloodlines. He moved to a sideboard and poured 2 glasses of amber liquid, offering one to Lyra. The truth is more complicated. Lyra accepted the drink cautiously. I'm listening. There are factions within the 5 territories who believe I'm unfit to rule. They claim my refusal to take a mate shows instability, weakness. So this is political. Isn't everything? He smiled without humor. But yes, I needed to appear receptive to tradition while maintaining control over my own fate. Lyra took a sip of her drink, some kind of honeyed mead that warmed her from within. That doesn't explain why you invited us to dinner. Kaylin's golden eyes fixed on hers with an intensity that made her wolf stir. Because unlike every other female in that hall, you weren't performing. You weren't trying to impress or seduce. You were simply authentic. I was trying to find a bathroom for my daughter, Lyra pointed out dryly. He laughed, the sound rich and unexpected. Yes, and you stood your ground against Elder Margot rather than cowering. Do you know how rare that is? Before Lyra could respond, a small voice called from the doorway. Mama? Mr. King? I'm ready for my story now. Lucas stood there in borrowed sleep clothes that were slightly too large, his damp hair curling around his face. Behind him, Ellie was already half asleep in the maid's arms. Of course, Kaylin said, setting down his glass. Let's get both of you settled first." What followed was so surreal that Lyra felt she must be dreaming. The Alpha King, feared ruler of 5 territories, helped tuck her children into bed. He sat on the edge of the mattress and read from an ancient-looking book of wolf legends, his deep voice shifting for different characters until both twins were heavy-lidded with sleep. "You're good with them," Lyra observed as they slipped back into the sitting room. "Children are more honest than adults," Kaelin replied. "There's no pretense, no hidden agendas. It's restful." Lyra studied him, seeing beneath the composed exterior to the weariness underneath. It must be lonely, being king. Something vulnerable flickered across his face before he masked it. "It comes with certain challenges." Yes. A comfortable silence fell between them, broken only by the soft crackling of the fire. "You still haven't truly explained why I'm here," Lyra said finally. Kaelin met her gaze directly. "I have a proposal for you, Lyra Griffin. One that could benefit us both." Her wolf stirred again, alert to the sudden tension in the air. "What kind of proposal?" "A practical one." He set his glass down and leaned forward. "I need a queen, someone strong enough to stand beside me against my enemies. You need security for yourself and your children, protection, status, resources." Lyra's heartbeat quickened. "Are you suggesting a marriage of convenience?" "Yes." His expression was calm, matter of fact. "You would have all the privileges of being queen, including the freedom to raise your children as you see fit. Your pack status would be restored and elevated, and I would have a partner who understands duty and sacrifice." Lyra sat frozen, her mind racing. "This is insane. You don't even know me." "I know enough. Darian spoke highly of your intelligence and integrity, and I've confirmed those observations today. But there's no—" She struggled to articulate the obvious. "There would be no love between us. Perhaps not initially," Kaelin conceded. "But respect is a solid foundation. The rest might follow, in time. And if it doesn't, then we would still have an advantageous partnership." Lyra shook her head, overwhelmed. "Why me? There must be dozens of more suitable candidates." "Suitable by whose standards?" His voice hardened. "The elders? The same people who labeled your children burdens." He leaned back, his expression softening again. "I'm not asking for an answer tonight. Think about it. Discuss it with your children. And if I refuse, then you return home tomorrow with my sincere best wishes and a royal stipend to complete your healer training." His lips curved in a slight smile. "I told you, Lyra. This is a proposal, not a command." Before she could formulate a response, a commotion erupted in the corridor outside. Raised voices, the sound of running feet. Kaelin was on his feet instantly, his posture shifting from relaxed to predatory in a heartbeat. The door burst open to reveal a harried-looking guard. "Your Majesty," he panted. "Forgive the intrusion, but there's been an incident at the border. The Eastern Alpha demands your immediate attention." The Eastern Alpha, ruler of the territories where Darian had disappeared. Lyra felt a chill run down her spine. "What kind of incident?" Kaelin demanded. "A patrol was attacked, sire. There are casualties." Kaelin's expression darkened. "Prepare the council chamber. I'll be there momentarily." The guard bowed and retreated. Kaelin turned back to Lyra, his manner brisk but not unkind. "Duty calls, it seems. Please make yourself comfortable. We'll continue our discussion tomorrow." "Of course," Lyra murmured, still processing everything that had happened. He moved toward the door, then paused. "Whatever you decide, Lyra, know this. You and your children are under my protection now. No one will call them burdens again." With that, he was gone, leaving Lyra alone with an impossible decision and the strange, unsettling feeling that her life had just changed irrevocably. Dawn broke over the palace gardens in shades of lavender and gold, finding Lyra already awake, watching the sunrise from a stone bench beneath a flowering tree. Sleep had proven elusive after Kaelin's stunning proposal, her mind too full of questions and possibilities. A marriage of convenience, to the Alpha King. The very idea seemed absurd, yet as she turned it over in her mind, examining it from every angle, she couldn't deny its practical appeal. The twins would have security, education, opportunities they could never dream of in the Silver Crescent pack, and she herself would be free from the constant struggle, the sideways glances, the whispered judgments. But at what cost? "You're up early." Lyra startled at the deep voice, turning to find Kaelin approaching along the garden path. He looked tired, shadows beneath his eyes suggesting he hadn't slept at all. The council meeting ran all night? She asked, as he settled beside her on the bench. Politics rarely keeps convenient hours. He rubbed a hand over his face, momentarily dropping the mask of royal composure. The Eastern Alpha is testing boundaries again. Is that where the patrol was attacked? Kaelin nodded grimly. 3 dead, 2 injured, all wearing royal colors. Lyra hesitated, then asked the question that had haunted her for years. Do you think the Eastern Pack had something to do with my mate's disappearance? It's possible. Kaelin chose his words carefully. Darien was investigating rumors of forbidden magic use in their territory, but there's never been proof of foul play. Forbidden magic. The word sent a chill through Lyra despite the morning warmth. Such practices had been outlawed for generations, blood rituals that perverted the natural order, sacrificing life force to gain power. If I accept your proposal, she said slowly, would I have access to information about his case? Kaelin studied her, his golden eyes intent. You would be queen. There would be very little beyond your reach. The possibility of finally uncovering the truth about Darien's fate, of giving her children certainty about their father, was powerfully tempting. But that's not why you should accept, Kaelin continued, reading her thoughts with unnerving accuracy. A marriage, even one of convenience, should not be entered into for vengeance or closure. And then why should I accept? Because together, we could accomplish more than either of us could alone. His gaze was steady, unflinching. Because your children deserve the best possible future. Because you deserve recognition for your strength, not punishment for circumstances beyond your control. A breeze stirred the flowering branches above them, sending pale petals drifting down around them like snow. The pack would never accept me as queen, Lyra said quietly. A widowed mother with no noble bloodline? The pack will accept whoever I choose, Kaelin replied, steel entering his voice. And I choose based on character, not pedigree. Lyra looked away, overwhelmed by his intensity. May I ask why you've never taken a mate before now? You've been king for 5 years. Something flashed across his face. Pain, perhaps, or resignation. My father's marriage was political, a loveless union that brought neither party happiness. I swore I would not repeat his mistakes. Yet here you are, proposing a political match? Political, yes, but not loveless, I hope. His voice softened. I believe we could build something genuine, given time. Before Lyra could respond, a small voice called out, Mama? They turned to see Lucas standing at the garden entrance, still in his borrowed nightclothes, rubbing sleep from his eyes. When he spotted Kaelin, he straightened, suddenly self-conscious. Good morning, Lucas, Kaelin greeted him. You're up with the sun as well. Ellie's still sleeping, the boy reported. She always sleeps late. A wise strategy, Kaelin replied solemnly. My royal advisors tell me I should try it sometime. Lucas giggled, relaxing slightly. Are you really a king all the time? Even when you sleep? I'm afraid so. That sounds hard. Kaelin's expression softened. It can be, but it's easier when you have people you trust around you. Lucas considered this, then asked with childish directness, Are you going to marry my mom? Lyra nearly choked. Lucas! Kaelin, however, didn't seem perturbed by the question. I've asked her to consider it, but it's a big decision, and your mother is very wise. She'll think carefully about what's best for all of you. Lucas turned to Lyra, his young face serious. If you marry him, would we live here in the palace? Yes, you would, Kaelin answered before Lyra could formulate a response. You and your sister would have your own rooms, tutors to teach you, and the run of the royal gardens. There's also a stable full of horses that rarely get enough exercise. Lucas's eyes widened. Horses? Real ones? Very real. Do you ride? No, the boy admitted, but I want to learn. Then that would be arranged. Kaelin glanced at Lyra, his expression softening. If your mother agrees, of course. Lyra felt a strange tightness in her chest at the gentle way he included her authority, never undermining her position with her son. It was a small courtesy, but one Darien's family had rarely extended after his disappearance. Mama, Lucas said, climbing onto the bench between them. I think you should say yes. Lyra smoothed his tousled hair. It's not that simple, little wolf. Why not? Don't you like him? The question, so innocent yet so direct, made her flush. She glanced at Kaelin, who was watching them with undisguised interest. I barely know him, she explained. But you could know him more if we stayed. Lucas reasoned with impeccable 5-year-old logic. And he has horses. Kaelin's lips twitched with suppressed amusement. A compelling argument indeed. A palace servant approached, bowing deeply. Your Majesty, Elder Margot insists on seeing you regarding yesterday's interruption of the ceremony. Kaelin's expression hardened. Tell Elder Margot I am otherwise engaged this morning. She is most insistent, sire. Then she can be insistent while waiting. He dismissed the servant with a wave, then turned back to Lyra. I apologize for the interruption. You have responsibilities, Lyra acknowledged. We shouldn't keep you. Actually, Kaelin said, rising, I thought perhaps you might join me for a tour of the palace. All 3 of you once Ellie wakes. Unless you've already made your decision? Lyra hesitated. I'm still considering. Then consider while exploring your potential new home. He offered a hand to Lucas, who took it without hesitation. Starting with breakfast. I imagine you're hungry? Starving, Lucas confirmed. And for the first time since meeting him, Lyra saw Kaelin laugh, a genuine, unrestrained sound that transformed his austere features. The morning unfolded in a surreal dream. Once Ellie awoke, Kaelin personally guided them through the palace, showing them not just the grand staterooms, but the cozy studies, hidden courtyards, and secret passages that made the imposing structure feel like a home. He seemed to delight in the twins' wonder, patiently answering their endless questions and pointing out details that would interest children. A carving of a wolf hidden in the library woodwork, a fountain where copper fish spouted water when you stepped on certain stones. Throughout it all, Lyra watched him, not the king, but the man. She saw how the palace staff responded to him, with respect, but not fear. She noted how he knew the names of servants, how he listened intently when anyone spoke, regardless of their rank. Most of all, she observed his natural ease with her children, never patronizing or distant. It was unexpected, and increasingly appealing. By midday, they had reached the Royal Portrait Gallery, a long hallway lined with paintings of previous kings and queens. My illustrious ancestors, Kaelin said with a hint of irony, gesturing to the stern faces that watched them from gilded frames. Some more worthy of memory than others. He stopped before the most recent portrait, a formidable-looking wolf with silver-streaked black fur and cold eyes. My father, King Alaric. He looks scary, Ellie whispered, pressing against Lyra's skirts. He was, rather, Kaelin admitted, but not always. His expression grew distant. Before my mother died, he was different, kinder. What happened to her? Lyra asked softly. Illness took her when I was 12. After that, he trailed off, then shook his head as if dispelling unwelcome memories. The throne changed him, or perhaps revealed what was always there. You're not like him, Lyra found herself saying. Kaelin's eyes met hers, vulnerability flashing in their golden depths. I try not to be. A commotion at the end of the gallery interrupted the moment. Elder Margot swept toward them, her silver robes billowing, flanked by 2 other council members. Her face was set in lines of rigid disapproval. Your Majesty, she began without preamble, the candidates and their families await your decision. The ceremony cannot simply be abandoned without... She broke off, noticing Lyra and the twins. Her lips thinned to a bloodless line. I see you are occupied. As I informed your messenger, Elder, Kaelin replied coolly. With all due respect, sire, there are protocols to be observed, traditions sacred to our people. To discard them for... Her gaze flicked dismissively to Lyra. A momentary distraction is beneath your station. Lyra felt her wolf bristle at the insult, but before she could react, Kaelin stepped forward, his posture subtly shifting from relaxed to predatory. Careful, Elder, he said softly. You approach the boundaries of insolence. Elder Margot faltered, seeming to recognize the danger in his tone. She inclined her head stiffly. I speak only out of concern for your reign, your Majesty. The noble families expect certain standards to be maintained. The noble families serve at my pleasure, not the reverse, Kaelin replied. And I have made my interests clear. Your interests? Elder Margot's gaze darted between Kaelin and Lyra, horrified understanding dawning. Surely you cannot be considering... I believe my personal affairs are my own, Elder. Kaelin's voice was velvet over steel. Now, if you will excuse us. It was not a request. Elder Margot's face flushed with angry color, but she bowed and retreated, her companions following hastily. When they were gone, Kaylin turned to Lyra with a grimace. My apologies. The elders often forget their advisory role is not the same as authority. She won't be the only one who objects, Lyra said quietly. If I accept. No, he agreed. There will be resistance. Perhaps even danger. His expression grew serious. I would not mislead you about that, Lyra. Being queen means making enemies as well as allies. Lyra felt a chill at his words. You believe I would be in danger? I believe anyone close to me becomes a potential target. He glanced at the twins, who had wandered a few steps away to examine a sculpture, which is why any queen of mine would have the full protection of the royal guard at all times. The implications hung heavy between them. This wasn't just about status or comfort. It was about power, politics, perhaps even survival. I should speak with my children, Lyra said finally, privately. Kaylin nodded, understanding in his eyes. Of course. Take all the time you need. He hesitated, then added softly, but know that whatever you decide, you have already changed something in me, Lyra Griffin. Something I thought long buried. Before she could ask what he meant, he bowed slightly and walked away, leaving her with the weight of his words and the watching eyes of his ancestors. Lyra gathered the twins and returned to their suite, settling them on the comfortable sofa in the sitting room. I need to talk to you both about something important, she began, choosing her words carefully. King Kaylin has asked us to stay here at the palace. Permanently. Because you're getting married? Ellie asked, bouncing slightly with excitement. Like in the stories? It would be a special kind of marriage, Lyra explained. One based on friendship and respect rather than the usual reasons. Will he be our new daddy? Lucas asked, his expression guarded. Lyra's heart clenched. No, little wolf. No one can replace your father. But King Kaylin would be a protector for us. Someone who would make sure we're safe and have everything we need. I like him, Ellie declared. He doesn't look at us funny like the pack does. And he promised horses, Lucas added seriously. Lyra smiled despite herself. There's more to consider than horses, my love. Living here would mean big changes. New rules, new expectations. People might not be kind about it at first. People aren't kind now, Lucas pointed out with the brutal honesty of childhood. At least here you don't cry at night when you think we're sleeping. Lyra stared at her son, shocked that he had noticed, that he had carried that knowledge without telling her. Oh, Lucas, I want you to be happy, Mama, he said, his small face solemn. And I think he makes you happy. You smile more. Tears pricked Lyra's eyes. When had her little boy become so perceptive, so protective? It's my job to make you happy, not the other way around. Why can't we all be happy? Ellie asked, crawling into Lyra's lap. Together? Why indeed? Lyra thought, holding her daughter close. Was she overthinking this? Refusing a chance at security? At potential happiness? Out of pride or fear? A soft knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. A royal guard stood there, his expression grave. Forgive the intrusion, but the king requests your presence immediately, Lady Griffin. Alarm shot through her. Has something happened? There's been another attack, my lady. This time within the palace grounds. Lyra hurried through the palace corridors, her heart hammering against her ribs. The guard led her not to the throne room or council chambers, but to the royal infirmary, a wing she hadn't seen during their tour. Wait here, she instructed the twins, leaving them with a kindly nurse before following the guard deeper into the medical wing. She found Kaylin standing outside a treatment room, his posture rigid with tension. Blood stained his sleeve, not his own, she realized with relief. What happened? She asked. Kaylin turned, his expression grave. An assassination attempt. Not on me, on my chief advisor, Lord Thorne. The elder who defended us at the ceremony? The same. Kaylin's jaw tightened. He was ambushed in the eastern gardens while taking his morning walk. 2 attackers, both dead. Thorne is alive, but gravely injured. A healer emerged from the treatment room, his robe spattered with blood. Your Majesty, we've stabilized him, but the wounds are severe. The blade was poisoned with moonshade extract. Can he be saved? Lyra asked. The healer exchanged a look with Kaylin. With conventional methods? No, but there are rumors of an ancient remedy. My mother was an herb master, Lyra said suddenly. She taught me about moonshade antidotes. I could try to help, with the right ingredients. Hope flickered in Kaylin's eyes. Whatever you need. As they discussed the treatment, a commotion erupted in the corridor. Elder Margot swept in, her face thunderous. Is it true? Lord Thorn attacked? And now you entrust his care to an untrained widow? Elder Margot, Kaelin's voice carried a dangerous edge. This is neither the time nor place for your prejudice. You risk everything, your reputation, your crown. For what? For her? Margot's accusatory finger pointed at Lyra. Before Kaelin could respond, a weak voice called from the treatment room. Let her try. Lord Thorn had regained consciousness, his ashen face barely visible from the doorway. My lord, you should rest, the healer protested. I know. Who did this? Thorn whispered. Everyone froze. Kaelin stepped closer. Who, old friend? Eastern emissaries. Not what they seem. His eyes fluttered. Papers. In my quarters. Proof. Eastern emissaries. Lyra repeated, a chill running through her. Like the ones who were meeting with my mate before he disappeared? Thorn's eyes found hers. Recognition dawning. Griffin's widow. Yes. Same faction. Black Moon cult. Kaelin's expression darkened. The forbidden magic practitioners. They seek ancient power. Need royal blood to complete ritual. Thorn's breathing grew labored. That's why Darien was taken. Why you are targeted now. The pieces clicked into place in Lyra's mind. They've been eliminating anyone who gets too close to discovering them. And now they've made their boldest move yet, Kaelin said grimly. Striking within palace walls. Not their boldest, Thorn managed. That's yet to come. They're here, among us. His eyes rolled back as he lost consciousness again. The healer rushed forward, barking orders to his assistants. Kaelin drew Lyra aside, his voice low and urgent. I need to secure Thorn's quarters. Find those papers. If what he says is true, we may be facing a conspiracy that spans both our territories. My children, Lyra said, suddenly terrified. If they're targeting those close to you, we'll be under my personal guard's protection, Kaelin assured her. As will you. Their eyes met, a silent understanding passing between them. This was no longer just about a political marriage or personal safety. It was about uncovering a threat that had already stolen one man she loved and now threatened everything else she held dear. I accept your proposal, Lyra said firmly, not just for protection, but because together we're stronger against whatever is coming. Something fierce and warm flashed in Kaelin's eyes. He took her hand, his touch sending unexpected heat through her veins. Then let it be done. Tonight. Tonight, Lyra echoed, startled. We face an enemy who moves in shadows. I would have you by my side, officially, with all the authority and protection that entails. His thumb traced her palm. Unless you need more time? Lyra thought of her children, of the danger that had followed them here, of the chance to finally uncover the truth about Darien. No, tonight is perfect. The ceremony was nothing like Lyra had imagined. No grand spectacle in the throne room, no elaborate gown or hundreds of witnesses. Instead, as twilight painted the sky in deepening blues, they gathered in the palace's ancient heart, the sacred grove where the first Alpha Kings had been crowned. Lyra wore a simple dress of silver white, her hair adorned with moonflowers. The twins stood beside her, solemn in their new clothes, understanding that something momentous was happening. Only a handful of witnesses were present, trusted guards, a few loyal elders, and Lord Thorn, who had insisted on being carried in on a stretcher, his body weakened but his mind alert thanks to Lyra's initial treatments. Elder Margot was conspicuously absent, having been confined to her quarters after suspicious correspondence was found among her possessions, evidence linking her to the Eastern emissaries. She was their informant, Kaelin had explained grimly, feeding them details about palace security, my movements, potential vulnerabilities, all because she resented my independence from council control. Now, as the first stars appeared, Kaelin stood before Lyra in the sacred circle, magnificent in his formal regalia, yet somehow more approachable than ever. The crown sat upon his head, not as a burden, but as a rightful extension of his strength. Under the watching moon, the ceremony master intoned, two souls seek to be bound, not just in the way of humans, with words and promises, but in the way of wolves, through blood and spirit, unbreakable and eternal. Lyra's heart pounded as Kaelin took her hands. This was no longer a marriage of convenience. Something had shifted between them, something neither had anticipated. I, Kaelin Nightshade, take you as my mate, my queen, My equal, he said, his voice steady and sure. I offer protection to you and yours, strength when you falter, honesty when you question, and loyalty until my final breath. The traditional words, but Lyra sensed he meant everyone. I, Lyra Griffin, take you as my mate, my king, my partner, she replied, surprising herself with the steadiness of her voice. I offer wisdom in your counsels, challenge to your certainties, healing for your wounds, and loyalty beyond the veil of death. The ceremony master presented a ceremonial blade. Kaelin took it, making a small cut across his palm, before offering it to Lyra. She did the same. Then they clasped hands, blood mingling with blood. With this blood, we are one pack, they spoke in unison. Something electric passed between them, a current of energy that made Lyra gasp. Her wolf stirred, recognizing his, reaching for the bond forming between them. Kaelin's eyes widened slightly, as if he too felt the unexpected depth of their connection. His gaze held hers as he lowered his head, his intent clear. The mating bite was meant to be symbolic in royal ceremonies, a gentle press of teeth against skin. But as Kaelin's lips touched the curve where her neck met her shoulder, Lyra felt her body respond with an intensity that took her breath away. Her head tilted instinctively, offering better access, and when his teeth broke skin, just enough to mark, she had to stifle a sound that had nothing to do with pain. When it was her turn, she felt a new confidence guide her movements. Stretching up, she placed her lips against his throat, feeling his pulse race beneath her touch. Her teeth grazed his skin, then pressed more firmly, leaving a mark that would heal quickly, but whose significance would remain. The bond is sealed, the ceremony master declared. Before the moon and these witnesses, I present Alpha King Kaelin and Queen Lyra, rulers of the 5 territories. The twins were the first to break protocol, rushing forward to embrace them both. Kaelin knelt, gathering them close without hesitation. Does this mean you're our father now? Lucas asked boldly. Kaelin's expression softened. It means I will protect and care for you as if you were my own blood, but your father will always be your father, and we will not rest until we know his fate. Lucas nodded, satisfied with this honest answer. Ellie simply threw her arms around Kaelin's neck, accepting him with the straightforward simplicity of childhood. As they moved to the reception that would follow, Lord Thorne beckoned Lyra to his side. You have changed him, the old wolf observed quietly. In all my years serving the crown, I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. We barely know each other, Lyra demurred. Sometimes the wolf recognizes what the mind has yet to comprehend, Thorne replied with a knowing smile. You have given him something he lost long ago, hope. Later, as the celebration wound down, Kaelin led Lyra to a private balcony overlooking the moonlit gardens. The twins had already been tucked into their new quarters, now officially the royal nursery, exhausted from the day's events. Are you having second thoughts? Kaelin asked, studying her face in the silver light. No, Lyra said truthfully. But everything has happened so quickly. Yesterday I was a widow struggling to feed my children. Today I'm a queen investigating a conspiracy that spans territories. And a wife, Kaelin added softly. Though I meant what I said when I first proposed. I have no expectations beyond what you're comfortable with. This marriage may have been expedited by circumstances, but I would not rush what grows between us. Lyra met his gaze, struck by the consideration in his words. And if I'm not ready to share your bed, then you have your own chambers, as befits a queen. His lips curved slightly, though I admit I find myself hoping that, in time, you might choose to visit mine of your own accord. The heat in his eyes made her breath catch, awakening something she had thought long dormant. This was not the arranged marriage she had expected, nor was he the cold, distant king she had imagined. The papers from Thorne's quarters confirmed our suspicions, Kaelin said, changing the subject. The Eastern emissaries are arriving tomorrow for what they're calling a peace summit. In reality, it's a cover for the final stage of their ritual. And we'll be waiting for them, Lyra concluded, with evidence of their crimes and guards ready to apprehend them. Yes, Kaelin's expression grew serious. But their leader, the one they call the Shadow Alpha, remains a mystery. Thorne believes he'll be among them, but in disguise. Then we'll uncover him together, Lyra said with newfound determination, and perhaps discover what happened to Darian in the process. Kaelin took her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her skin. Together, he agreed, as mates should be. The word mates resonated between them, carrying weight beyond the political union they had entered. Something deeper was forming, something neither had anticipated, but both were beginning to welcome. As they stood together under the watching moon, Lyra felt a strange sense of rightness settle over her. The path ahead was fraught with danger and uncertainty, but for the first time in years, she didn't face it alone. She had a pack again, not just her children, but a mate who valued her strength rather than seeing it as a threat. Whatever challenges tomorrow brought, they would face them as wolves were meant to, together, fierce and unafraid. And somewhere in the distance, as if acknowledging their bond, a lone wolf howled at the moon, a sound of both warning and celebration, of endings and new beginnings. If you enjoyed this story, a like or comment really helps. And if you wish to hear more tales like this one, make sure you subscribe so you never miss the next tale.